Our next item is our special briefing item, which is the 2016-17 budget amendment. This is the first of two special briefing items, if you recall, from adjusting our agenda. So we'll have the resolution after this. Dr. Swift.
Thank you, Madam President and trustees. I just love what we're going to do this evening, and it is that halfway through our budget year, we get to rectify all of the work that we've been doing. And so our CFO, Ms. Jill Minnick, is back at the podium. You all recall that you pass a budget in June by requirement of law in the state of Michigan. That's a wonderful process that goes on year-round. The problem with the June date, however, is that by that time we have not received our per pupil funding for the year. We do not know in June how many students will show up in the Ann Arbor Public Schools in the fall, and how many teachers exactly that we'll have to hire. And so we do our work following June over the summer and over the fall, and then each January we mark the halfway point in our budget year to kind of do what in the old days we called balancing the checkbook. So this evening, Ms. Minnick will be going over with us the additional revenues that have come in that we didn't necessarily know exactly in June. And she'll also be going over with us those additional expenditures. Trustees, the good news about this is that we discuss these items all year. So none of this should be a surprise to anyone. It is, though, the first time that we see everything kind of laid out together, and we look at what distance we're making toward our goals for the year. So I'm really excited to have Ms. Minnick share this information this evening. I do want to express our gratitude to Trustee Mitchell in her role as treasurer. She began the work yesterday and reviewed this budget amendment with us in the afternoon, and I appreciated the opportunity. I always learn more every time we take another look at our budget and at our numbers. And so with that, Ms. Minnick, we are delighted for you to kind of show us the scoreboard and where we are at this halfway point in our game for the 16-17 school year. Ms. Minnick.
Thank you. Trustees, Dr. Swift, thank you for this opportunity to present to you the proposed amendment of the 2016-2017 General Fund Original Budget. And Dr. Swift gave a terrific overview, indicating that our original budget for this school year was adopted in June, and that is prior to us knowing our key variables that have terrific influence on our budget, including enrollment, state aid, staffing, and those kinds of factors. So as a result, every year in January, February or so, we do go through the budget amendment process to update those assumptions that we made last spring to what we know now. I will review each of these items in detail, but in summary, the proposed amendment includes revisions of those June 2016 revenue and expenditure assumptions, and it includes the additional special education millage expected proceeds and allocations of $9.4 million. You'll recall that this millage was passed in May of 2016, and it was too close to the time of our budget adoption in order to properly account and plan for those funds. So this amendment includes attending to those district priorities that the board identified of employee compensation, program enhancements, and class size reductions. It also includes a revision to our projected increase to the fund balance in an amount of $122,566. And this is down slightly from our original projection of $352,566. So looking at revenues in more detail, the state aid foundation allowance increase was as we projected, $60 per pupil. So the 2016-17 foundation allowance for our district is $9,230 per pupil. Our enrollment increased by 350 students. Our original budget had an assumption of 100 students. So the total increase in our revenues for state aid and enrollment-related factors is $3.2 million. We had originally budgeted for a revenue increase of $7.1 million. So the amendment reflects a net revenue increase between those two figures of $1.5 million. As I mentioned previously, the revenues have also been revised to reflect an additional special education millage, those expected revenues of $9.4 million. And it also includes the Michigan Schools Public Employee Retirement System, the retirement funding pass-through. This is money that is received by the district from the state. We have no control over how retirement benefits are offered to our employees, but the state forwards those funds to us, and then we turn around and we submit it back to the state as part of our payment for retirement expenditures. So we have the pass-through funding revenues of $400,000. So the total projected increase in our revenue is $11,300,000. Looking at our expenditures, we've updated those assumptions as well. We have attended to employee compensation. We negotiated a 2% raise, if you recall that from last spring, that amounted to $3.2 million. Additional staffing for program enhancements in reducing our class sizes. We have an increase in our expenditures of $6 million. And then again, the retirement funding pass-through of $400,000. So we are attending to those board directives of recognizing and attending to employee compensation, program enhancements, and class size reductions. The next two items on our expenditure list are the amendments that we made to our GCA service contract in the amount of $1.6 million. We amended that contract in June. We also amended our service contract with Durham for transportation. We amended that in December of 2016. So we will have a change to our expenditures, an increase of $330,000 for the partial year that that amendment will apply to. You'll note that the restorations and insurance proceedings for the Allen flood event are ongoing. So accordingly, our proposed amendment does not include those costs, and those will continue to be monitored, and insurance proceedings will occur throughout the rest of the school year. So our total projected increase in expenditures is $11,530,000. Looking at our fund balance then, when we have changes to our revenues and our expenditures, that will have an impact on our fund balance. So our original budget, we had estimated an increase to our fund balance of $352,566. With these revisions to our revenues and our expenditures, the increase to the fund balance per this proposed amendment is $122,566. So it is a slight decrease in the amount we expect to add to our fund balance, in an amount of $230,000. Our audited fund balance to start our school year was $21.5 million, and that audited fund balance equates to 10% of last year's budgeted revenues and 10.2% of last year's budgeted expenditures. And that's equivalent to $1,254 per pupil. With the increase to our fund balance per the proposed amendment, we are then looking at a projected fund balance at the end of this school year of $21.6 million. And this we anticipate to equate to 9.6% of our current year revenues and 9.6% of our expenditures. And the reason those percentages are important is because the state requires that our fund balance be in excess of 5% in order to avoid early warning legislation impacts. And our board policy requires that our fund balance be in the range of 6 to 15% of our budgeted expenditures. So you can see that a 9.6% fund balance does meet both of those objectives. And that fund balance is equivalent to $1,240 per pupil. So in conclusion, before we look at the specific numbers in more detail, the proposed amendment to the 16-17 general fund budget reflects our commitment to the district goals of employee compensation, enhanced programming, and reducing class sizes. But we will continue to monitor these revenues and expenditures throughout the school year, and they are subject to change, just as a result of normal and expected fluctuations in enrollment and staffing and state and local funding and other influences on our finances. So we'll turn now to a bird's eye view of this budget proposal. We'll start in the first column, the 2016-17 original adopted figures. Our original budget that we're currently operating under shows revenues of $215 million. I'm rounding our numbers. Our expenditures are budgeted at a level of $214 million. And so we had originally anticipated an increase to our fund balance of $352,000. If we continue down the column, we can see that we budgeted our fund balance. At that time, we expected that our beginning fund balance for the school year would be $17.1 million. And when you add the increase to the fund balance, we had budgeted an ending fund balance of $17.4 million. And this equated to a percentage of our revenues of 8.1% and 8.1% of our expenditures. If we move over to the column to the right, the proposal shows an expected revenue figure of $226.3 million and proposed revisions to our expenditures for a total expenditure amount of $226.2 million. This results in an anticipated increase in our fund balance of $122,566. Looking further down that column, since we adopted our budget in June, we now know what our audited fund balance amounts are, or was. Our current fund balance is $21.5 million. And you'll note that the increase between what we had originally anticipated and what our audited fund balance amount came out to be is a result of one-time funds last year as a result of the sale of properties. Looking at the next column, the variance column here, this will show you that our revenues are increasing by $11.3 million and our expenditures are increasing by $11,350,000. $11,530,000, which results in a decrease to our original budgeted addition to fund balance of $230,000. You'll see at the bottom of the page just a reiteration of the revenue variances that I just spoke of, the special education millage receipts, the change in the revenues for enrollment and foundation allowance, and the retirement pass-through. And then again for the expenditure variances for employee compensation, additional staffing, and the retirement pass-through. And then the changes in our service contracts. The last page is the overall budget that is in the format that the state requires. And it reflects the original budget for revenues of $215 million and the proposed revenues of $226.3 million. It also reflects changes in the line items for expenditures from $214.6 million to a proposed amendment of $226.2 million. This results in a net change in our fund balance, again, of $122,566, which equates to 9.6% of our revenues and 9.6% of our expenditures. The far right column, again, expresses the variances in those revenues and expenditure line items. This concludes my presentation of the proposed amended budget. Do you have any questions?
I do want to just share with our community, and Ms. Minnick mentioned this, but I just think it's important that the Allen flood will continue to work its way through our insurance process. So we are all aware that that will get fully rectified in June. But I continue, trustees, to update you as we get indications of kind of where we are with that process. We already know that our operating, day-to-day operating, so the rent and the transportation and those daily costs are running beyond our insurance coverage. So we already are aware that that is part of the issue and part of why you heard on our liability insurance renewal last week that we increased that operating amount. We hope this never happens again, but we've learned that lesson. And the other piece would be on the building components. Of course, we hope to leverage sinking fund for as much of those as we can that are not covered by insurance. But we are preparing and just want to be transparent with the community that there will be impact to the general fund. We anticipate in June when we do our final consolidation. Is that fair, Ms. Minnick? Yes. Okay. Very good.
We will do another final budget amendment in June.
Thank you.